Today's press conference is the first for 2018. We have with us the political leader and leader of the opposition, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Llewellyn Douglas, the chairperson of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party and Parliament representative for St. Christopher II Central Bastille, the Honorable Marcella Liburd. We also have with us the Deputy Chairman or the Deputy National Political Leader of the party, Dr. Earl Martin, Parliament representative for West Bastille, St. Christopher III, the Honorable Conris Maynard, as well as Dr. Terrence Drew, the caretaker for St. Christopher VIII. We also welcome representatives of the Labour spokesman, Win FM, Sugar City, Voice of the Caribbean, SKN Newsline, SKN Vibes, and the St. Kitts-Nevis Observer. The proceedings will now be turned over to Dr. Earl Martin, the Deputy Political Leader of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party.
Very much, Erasmus. A pleasant good afternoon to our citizens at home and abroad, residents of our beautiful country, one and all. Welcome to the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party's first press conference for the new year, 2018. I also want to acknowledge the presence of the members of the press who are here this afternoon. For 3 years, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis been the victim of a failed and intensely corrupt government. Our people have endured hardships and embarrassments of varying degrees as a result of this administration's incompetence, mismanagement of public funds and institutions, high levels of corruption, trickery, deception, nepotism, and greed. In just 3 short years, the people of the Federation have realized that they were lied to and taken for a ride. The coalition government's action have in many instances resulted in increased stress and strain on our people. In other instances, their foolhardiness has resulted in unwarranted increased public debt, the endangerment of precious and scarce resources like our aquifer at Ponds Estate, and the sharp loss of millions of dollars in public funds due to corruption, graft, and unprecedented greed and mismanagement. Take, for example, the remodeling of the ferry terminal building, a small single-story concrete building that was, according to the government, first budgeted at $250,000 EC. The final cost of the building, according to the government, again, was EC $1.4 million. This is an obvious case of corruption, misappropriation of public funds, and a sheer wastage of the country's scarce financial resources. The construction of the second pier is yet another example of this government's incompetence and failure to make sound fiscal decisions in the country's benefit. The pier was originally budgeted to cost $31 million US. Yet this government decided to discard every single plan that the Labour administration had already set for a new pier and to go a different route. They decided it was wise not only to start from scratch and delay the project by 3 years or more. As a result of their actions, the second pier will now cost the country $48 million US, or EC $130 million, an increase of 50% over the original price. A grand loan of US $34 million, equivalent to 92 million EC dollars, was taken from the National Bank because our banks must have thought that the cost of construction of $48 million US was completely unjustified. We also know that the credit risk manager, who was only 3 months into a 3-year contract, resigned hurriedly after his advice on risks associated with the bank's finance policy was disregarded in the name of politics. It has been reported that the Prime Minister and his brother, the one who heads another bank, are directly managing the bank from Church Street. One of our major financial institutions may be at great risk and impending danger as a result of the greed, corruption, and the foolhardiness of this government. The public should be made fully aware of two important facts regarding this matter as follows. The first are that the repayment of these loans taken to construct this second pier will be solely the responsibility of the St. Christopher A&C Ports Authority, SCASPA. The second is that as a result of SCASPA being hurried into EC $130 million worth of debt, the government is now seeking to privatize SCASPA in an effort to rid itself of this debt and incurred as a direct result of the incompetence, poor fiscal management, and severe lack of foresight. At the last sitting of Parliament, after the government, in collusion with the Speaker, failed to get every member of the opposition to leave the parliamentary chambers, a bill to privatize SCASPA and sell off its assets was removed off the order paper. The overpriced second pier project has put us in a pickle, and we will pay clearly for this form of corruption. It is my understanding, meanwhile, a certain minister of government will supply cement, steel, and lumber at jacked up prices for his own benefit and at our own detriment. Looking at the Basti High School saga, we see again blinding evidence of the government's incompetence, deceit, and trickery. After all the deceit in trying to convince much of the population that there was something fundamentally wrong with the Bastia High School's original compound, despite numerous reports from top scientific research and testing agencies that indicated the complete opposite, the government has decided to construct a new Bastia High School directly on the top of the island's single largest source of water inside the Basti Valley National Park, an area protected by legislation. Were this government to repeal that legislation to accommodate a lie, our island will lose the most abundant and longest-serving source of fresh water for years to come due to contamination, heavy metals from school chemistry labs, sewage, and general industrial runoff. To state the obvious, this cannot be allowed to happen in the Federation of St. Kitts-Nevis. 2018 is the year for action. The Labour Party has spoken out long and loud against the failures of this government, the injustices committed against our people and our land, and the incompetence which threatens to place our country at the back of the line. As we prepare our party, we are moving forward with a mandate, ready to take our beloved country forward as we have always done. Our party stands solidly behind our dear leader, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, our candidate selection committee, and our party's executive as we strengthen and rebrand our organization, groom fresh leaders at the constituency level, and ready ourselves to serve with all our might again. I am proud of all the comrades who have come forward to serve in their respective constituencies. Our organization is a highly democratic one. We are therefore extremely proud of our organization's proud history of our past leaders like Comrade Bratcher, France, Southwell, St. John Payne, Bryant, Mills, and all the other comrades, great and small, who have gone to the great beyond. The days of this government are numbered. I end by urging our citizens and residents to keep the faith and to be strong. Hold strain and be ready at all times for a change, a positive change, a relief from corrupt band of leaders that is running this government. I thank you. I will now turn over press conference, as part of the press conference, to Dr. Terrence Drew.
I want to speak today about our healthcare system. Our healthcare system has deteriorated significantly over the past 3 years. It is now in the ICU. It is sick as if it had caught a bad bacterial infection. An infection of incompetence, vindictiveness, and lack of vision coupled with corruption. The population is totally dissatisfied with the dismal delivery of healthcare service. This includes, of course, the healthcare workers, patients, their families, their friends, all. Everybody is frustrated with our healthcare system. Recently, the least paid workers, who we call the auxiliary workers, and maids and others who do cleaning, those who work in the kitchen, were denied a mere $100 that they were accustomed to getting around Christmas time. This denial was carried out by the payroll master of the government, who is the sister of the Prime Minister. Also, the Minister of Health, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, and the Honorable Wendy Phipps. They were told that Labour overpaid them for many years. The workers, of course, were hurt, as many of them could not buy that extra ham, pay that extra bill, pay for that extra pound of rice, or even send their child to the movies or extra money to participate in the celebrations. The poor has to suffer unnecessarily. Additionally, senior nurses who are deemed to support the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party are being forced to retire, while foreign nurses are being recruited in large numbers. Large numbers of nurses at the college level, or those who are studying at the college level, are failing the nursing exams. And this can be attributed to stress, bad treatment, and lack of appreciation. Moreover, the MRI machine that is located at the Biomedical Center, aka Monkey Farm, has brought in well over $1 million in its first year of operation. This project enriches a single family. But to make matters worse, they have now gone and placed a CT scan machine at the JNF hospital. Again, this family enriching itself from the healthcare system. And so it is clear that this has become a profitable family business. The corruption in healthcare is now widespread and has reached the United States Senate. We see the immoral, unethical, human subject trials that have taken place here on our shores, the likes of which would not have been seen in the Caribbean region for many, many decades. And I'm speaking of the herpes trial and the stem cell. It was Minister Phipps and the Honorable Eugene Hamilton and the Cabinet of St. Kitts-Nevis that sanctioned the stem cell trial, where plasma was brought into our hospital from another country without going through the necessary testing and regulations as stipulated by the Office of the CMO. Let us remember that the CMO was quickly removed when he acted to protect the health of our nation. Let me continue also and talk about the health saga that is taking place at the Labor Department. At the Labor Department presently, the workers and the population at large who access the Labor Department's building are at risk. The environment there was deemed unfit for human beings to occupy, while the Drug Council, which shares that building with the Labor Department, has sent home its workers. Minister Amri and PS Ron Collins continue to allow the workers to suffer. It is interesting to note that neither the Honorable Vance Amri nor Ron Collins share any office space in the Labor Department's building, and therefore they do not care. On the issue of leadership, I want to say that I fully support the legitimate leadership of the Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, who was elected through a democratic process at the last party's conference. This party, I must remind the population, is the party that brought democracy to our country. It is the party that brought the right to vote to this country. And it is the party whose foundational principle is democracy. And lastly, I want to point out to our citizens that crime continues to be a serious problem. Even though the Prime Minister tries to mislead this country into suggesting that the crime situation has come under control, we recognize that it is not so. If we look at the statistics, we quickly recognize that there is an increase in the number of robberies here in St. Kitts-Nevis. In addition, we must also recognize that there were 3 murders in the Federation of St. Kitts-Nevis in this month alone. And therefore, we continue to extend to the government our hand of cooperation to deal with the issue of crime. However, for the last 3 years, this effort has been frustrated as the government has refused to discuss with us. At this point, I end my opening statement. Thank you.
Media and all listening, as you're aware, the government has embarked upon a distraction campaign as it pertains to the leadership of our great party. The St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party has a very strong tradition of democracy, unlike any other political party in St. Kitts and Nevis. Each year, as you may be aware, the delegates of the party assemble at our annual party conference and vote to elect the officers of our party, including the party leader. Since 1989, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas has been elected as party leader, and most definitely, God's willing, will be re-elected in May of this year. Dr. Douglas's leadership of our party has been and will continue to be critical to our success and our stability. In the most recent polls conducted by our party, it suggests that Dr. Douglas is the most desired leader in St. Kitts and Nevis across all parties. This is, of course, after the country has had a chance to effectively compare the 2 leaders that are on offer to our country. And the electorate are saying they will reject Dr. Timothy Harris and that they prefer the leader of our party, Dr. Denzil Douglas. With his continued mandate from the delegates of the Labour Party, Comrade Dr. Douglas is leading the transformation of our party as we select new candidates that will help secure victory for the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party at the next polls. He has assured his commitment to offering his experience and knowledge to the people of my generation, so that when we eventually are called upon to lead, we would be able to do so. Now, while the government embarks upon this distraction campaign, the country is running away on a wild horse. We said to the government, they must spend their energies on bettering the lives of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, as we all have real issues to deal with. It appears that as part of the government's distraction campaign, the Speaker of the National Assembly has been mandated to continue the abuse of parliamentary procedures and practices to suit the whims and fancies of a puppet master. It has now become clear, even to a former chairman of the People's Action Movement, that the Speaker is shamelessly stifling democracy in our federation by his continued efforts to shut up anyone on the opposition who dares to speak about the many injustices of this government. The recent edition of this was his purported suspension of the leader of the opposition only after he happened to utter words suggesting that we may have a sexual predator in the government. Might I remind you, while these distraction tactics continue, that in almost 3 years under this PAM, CCM, PLP coalition government, the government has failed to attract any serious new investment to St. Kitts and Nevis. As a result, the job market has suffered. And the economy is also suffering. If you recall, when the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party was in office, our many investments reaped significant benefits through the SIDF, for instance, that could have supported programs like the REACH, the GRASP, the FRESH, and many others. But now, sadly, the country is lagging because of the absence of such ingenuity. Foreign investors are telling us that they have lost confidence in the local government and the economy. This government has caused St. Kitts and Nevis to be seen as an unsafe place for investments. Even with a PhD in accounting, the Prime Minister has failed to develop any economic strategies to move St. Kitts and Nevis forward. As a result, the Federation is moving backwards. Manufacturing has been down, new businesses have been down, and the ECCB continues to revise our economic progress downwards, that is our GDP growth. For a third consecutive year, it has done so. The Harris government continues to fail to meet the 5% GDP growth needed for federal long-term economic stability. In fact, under the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, before we left office, the GDP was exceeding that of the ECCB growth projections. May I remind you that when we left office, the economy was moving speedily along at around 7% growth. But in a short period of time, as we have learned towards the end of 2016, we are now stumbling and stuttering at about 1.9%. Harris and his government has failed when it comes to the economy. The cost of living has increased. People do not feel the removal of that. We have increased rates of unemployment. Young men have more idle time to do idle things. The Federation has experienced a holistic economic decline in every aspect of the local economy. But meanwhile, people are having a very hard time to accept that while the fortunes of the country on a whole are declining, the fortunes of Harris, his family, and his friends look bright. The Federation continues to drop in its ranking, for instance, in World Bank Ease of Doing Business, and presently ranks 184 out of 190 countries. SKN, St. Kitts and Nevis, is in company with the likes of Afghanistan and Liberia and other war-torn countries in the World Bank's Doing Business Index. If this is not an indication of moving backwards, then what is? I would like to stop here for now, and we await your questions.
I promise a press conference every month from November, so this is our third, and I can assure you that we will continue month after month to hold these press conferences. One of the main issues that you'll find in any country, it's happening in America, it's happening anywhere, is the issue of leadership. And so leadership becomes a very important aspect of whatever happens in particular countries, in our politics. St. Kitts and Nevis is no different. And in light of what's happening now, with the arrogance that we see being displayed now in the leadership of this country, that becomes even more important. And so we in the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party are fortunate to have a leader like Dr. Denzil Douglas, who is compassionate, who is caring, and who is competent. I myself have been at party meetings with him. I've been in cabinet with him. And it amazes me all the time how he allows everyone to have their say. In party meetings, whether it's people on the executive or just somebody from the floor, you can have your say. And he allows you to have your say, even if he doesn't agree with what you are saying. Under this current leadership that we have, everyone's speech is being stifled. They're going onto Facebook pages, calling people and telling them to take down the posts, people who work in government service, threatening them with their jobs. People can't call into any stations. They're in the offices saying you can't listen to this station and that station. They put on whatever station, only what they say. There are now systems in government headquarters to listen to people's conversations. So you must understand the pressure that public servants are under, where they can't say anything, they can't do anything that even barely criticizes this government. This is what is happening in this country. And so as a result, you have hundreds of public servants who have been dismissed, they are being demoted, they're being unfairly sent home, they're being sidelined. This is happening on a regular basis. It happened in December, and we had some at the turn of January as well. And if you see the types of letters, the disrespect that is being meted out to workers, never seen before. And you only had a perfect example of that in the Honorable Vance Amrish presentation in Parliament, if you all heard him on Tuesday, basically saying that the workers who got sick in the Labor Department, they're only, doing that to embarrass the government. It's a paranoid people. Imagine you as a worker, the minister is saying to you that you are lying about your sickness, even though you have produced medical evidence to show that there is mold in your system. So he's not only challenging the workers and saying, don't bother with them, they're only trying to embarrass the government, but he's also challenging the doctors who they went to and who gave them these reports. No respect at all for workers. That is what we're experiencing in this country. And you'd note that if you're to get a promotion, if you're to get an appointment, if you're to get a loan, a concession, even if you're not in government per se, what is happening is you'll get a call from either the Prime Minister himself or one of his agents reminding you, or a text message, reminding you of the next walk, reminding you of the next meeting that you're to attend, reminding you of the contribution that you have to give to him and to his party because they just gave you a loan from the development bank or because your business just got a concession. This is happening on a regular basis in this country. I call that extortion, because when you elect a government, you elect a government for all of the people. Nobody is supposed to suffer the indignity of saying, well, you have to come to the next party meeting, or you must be on the next walk, and then the Prime Minister takes a picture with you and send it out. I mean, people are under intense pressure in this country just to protect their little jobs, and that cannot be right. Right now, at the electoral office, there are many atrocities taking place there. The laws are being breached with impunity. We have consistently pointed out the conflict of interest in having the Attorney General being the minister responsible for the electoral office. Serious conflict of interest is involved here, because he, as the Attorney General, is supposed to be the person who they look to for legal advice, but he's also the minister. So when there are breaches at the office, what happens? Would he advise himself in these matters? This is a serious matter that needs to be addressed. And so what is happening there is that people's names are being taken off, removed from the list. They're being taken off from the list without their knowledge. And by the time they go in there, into the electoral office, they're telling them, okay, go and re-register. So it seems to be a little ploy. Take off your name, and then if you go, you say, okay, go and re-register. This just cannot be right. And so we must act, and act now on these matters. There's so much illegal practices going on at that electoral office. Many months, revised monthly lists are not posted in breach of the law. Transfers and not posted. Even persons whose names are removed, that should be published. That is not done. So people are not even aware why their names are not off, why their names are not on the list. But then they're telling them, go and re-register. As a matter of fact, because of this, we had, on the 23rd of October last year, 2017, written a letter to the supervisor of elections, pointing out to him the fact that list of transfers were not being published, that monthly revised lists were not being published. We also copied the letter to the members of the Electoral Commission and to the Attorney General, 23rd of October, 2017. To date, some 3 months later, I don't have to tell you that we didn't even have the decency of a response. There's been no response. And so I want to end by sounding a warning and letting them know this is totally unacceptable to us, and we intend to take legal action to deal with these matters that are happening at the electoral office, for that seems to be the only way in which we're going to have these matters addressed. Thank you.
I wish to assure you that we highly value the time that you are taking to listen to us, and we equally highly value your interest in our organization, your interest in its work, and its commitment to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Allow me also to extend words of gratitude to Freedom FM and KISS FM and those other stations who would transmit our press conference to the benefit of those who are in Radio Land and those of our citizens who are scattered around the entire world. We appreciate their facilitating the Labour Party in reaching all of you so that as to keep you abreast of the issues affecting our beloved St. Kitts and Nevis. For 3 years, we have observed and endured the gruesome effects of the Harris-led regime on the people of our nation, the effects on its treasury, and, of course, our country on a whole. We have all witnessed gross nepotism. We have witnessed graft and corruption in government, the likes of which our nation has never, ever experienced or imagined before. We have endured every local, regional, and international embarrassment that Dr. Harris and his ministers have subjected us to, as well as the injustices and the human rights violations committed against our people in the civil service, including our nurses, our policemen and policewomen, our teachers, and the ordinary workers in our public service. We have been assaulted through the invasion of our privacy and the attempts at silencing of the voices of those asking questions or speaking objectively about government corruption, incompetence, or its cold indifference to our people. We have witnessed the misuse of public funds to finance a criminal ring of Facebook trolls and abusers who hide behind fake names, seeking to emasculate every man, woman, and child who dares and who does not support the government to bring their name into disrepute or to threaten them with physical harm. In the 3 years that this coalition government has been in office, there have been numerous scandals, local, regional, and international alike. Under the Harris regime, our federation became known as a rogue nation in the health industry, a direct result of 2 major health scandals emanating out of the Joseph and France General Hospital
with Cabinet's approval despite their denial. Our federation became involved in a highly publicized international standoff with China over a fugitive for 2 long, solid months. And all of these atrocities have served only to degrade our reputation around the world. And hence, our once stellar reputation as a shining Caribbean star is now very seriously soiled. Our Prime Minister has started a race to the bottom in the Citizenship by Investment program in our part of the world. Our citizenships are now going for a dime a dozen, and many crooks and vagabonds are parading in the program when in fact the opposite was promised. The cost of living for the ordinary man has increased sharply. Economic growth has declined from 7% to a paltry 1.8%. St. Kitts-Nevis ranking in the World Bank Doing Business Index has slipped to a position of 184 out of 190 countries, all the way down at the bottom, due to the corruption and dysfunction in the registrar's office, putting us in the very same category as countries like Afghanistan and other war-torn countries on that measure. Our healthcare sector is under siege as a result of the incompetence of ministers Eugene Hamilton and his junior minister Wendy Phipps. Nursings, they are leaving the sector in droves. Government is terminating others, and our hospitals are in complete disarray and lacking basic medication and supplies. The situation is untenable, and the lives of well-being and the lives and well-being of our citizens are now simply at risk. On a word of corruption and deceit with respect to the Bastia High School, they have at last led to an endangerment of our aquifer and its vital supply of water to homes and businesses alike. The unwarranted prolonged closure of the electoral office and the denial of our citizens their fundamental right to register to vote for whom they wish is part of a corrupt scheme on the part of the government to entrench itself outside of the legitimate will of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. The disregard by the chief registration officer, one who is called Mr. Elvin Bailey, by his refusal to respond to our letters concerning the lack of publication of the electoral list, aligns with the modus operandi of the government of the day. The illegitimate removal of names of voters, people who have voted before, many, many times before, removing their names from the voters list will not go unchallenged here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The registration of voters who have not even seen the door of the electoral office. This must immediately cease, as we must stamp out electoral office fraud and corruption from this country. These are serious matters that must be treated seriously, and we will lead on this particular issue fearlessly and vigorously during this year. It is blindingly evident that this tripartite government has failed on all counts. It has failed our healthcare sector because it is now trailing in the dust. Crime and murders continue unabated, to the point where even within the four walls of the Attorney General chambers, sex crimes are allegedly being committed. In fact, we have become the ridicule of the Caribbean, where the AG Chambers is now seen as a place driven by penal-based justice instead of principle-based justice. The AG Chambers is vandalized and scandalized by inappropriate behavior in our womenfolk and misconduct in public office. In fact, we therefore again call upon the Prime Minister to investigate those alleged atrocities and bring to justice those who are found guilty. And if this is not done, we will put fire inside there to ensure that it happens. The time has come for us, when most of you have concluded that our country and our people cannot continue to live like this. The abuse of parliamentary privileges by Timothy Harris and his puppet must now come to an end. Again, we go back to the fact that our people have been ridiculed. They are being ridiculed because they elected a government that they expected to provide jobs, which are now few, I should say, and far between. And as I've mentioned before, the citizenship program, which once led this country among the countries of the Caribbean region and among the world in citizenship programs, this is now on its final death knell. Again, our actions as a party on these matters in going forward will be sharp and they will be decisive. Our parliament has never fallen so short of its mandate to promote free and fair debate of the public's business. 2018, I must emphasize to you, the members of the press, it is the year for change. In keeping with this forward-thinking mandate, the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party has over the past 3 years undergone a period of thorough self-examination. The party has been brutally honest with itself during this period of introspection. As an organization that serves people, we took our time and identified our weak points and our past misjudgments. After a series of painstaking analyses and consultative exercises, we instituted some major changes, all of which will be revealed to the country and the world as we go on. In this vein, I wish to declare that our candidate selection process, for the most part, is completed. 3 out of the 4 new candidates have been identified. The final one should be completed in a week or so. The public announcement of the conclusion of our thorough candidate selection process is at hand. And our party, which is a democratic organization, also, of course, which monitors the response of our people to our changes, we therefore will bring eventually these matters to our national executive, and we will be finally informed. As with any such process, some applicants for candidacy have succeeded and some have not been successful. We shall work to build bridges with all concerned for the good of our country and for the good of our party. On behalf of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party and the Candidate Selection Committee, which I have had the privilege of chairing, I thank all 18 persons for putting themselves forward for consideration to rid our country of the present encroaching narcissistic dictatorship in our country. And I also join with Conway Maynard, the Honorable Conway Maynard, in commenting that never before have we seen such fervor, such youth coming and rising to the call to rid our country of dictatorship. The St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party's record of success, it still stands today, unbeaten for all the country, for the region, and also the world to see. We made St. Kitts-Nevis #1, and we are ready in ourselves to serve our country yet again. This corruption that we have all spoken to must come to an end. This abuse must come to an end. The narcissistic dictatorship and self-entrenchment and enrichment must come to an end as well. The deception just has to end. A new era of good governance means new freedom of information legislation and an activation of integrity in public life legislation that we passed earlier, but which the government has failed over the last 3 years to move forward. A new era of good governance means good fiscal management and fair and open bidding for government contracts enforced again, every family being equally important and equally valued. Our people's health and well-being will again be first priority, and our youth must be empowered in the way that we have empowered them in the past. And so in closing, I urge our citizens and our residents, I urge you all to remain strong and vigilant this year, the year of resolution, the year when we resolve to end dictatorship here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I ask you therefore to be on the lookout. Look out especially for the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party's announcements, for its events and its forums. Be courageous in the face of the seemingly unending corruption, nepotism, and hardship and attempts at oppression. 2018, I emphasize, it is a year of action, not a year of silence. The time for us to sit back and watch the Harris government's operations, it has ended. We are now moving forward with full strength and full steam ahead in preparation for assuming the leadership of our great nation once again. Members of the press, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Leader. I want to thank all the presenters this afternoon for their presentation. The floor is now open for questions, comments from the press. Kindly indicate who you're representing at the moment so we have a clear indication who you are. Thank you very much.
Bell of SKN Vibes. I have a few questions. One, to Dr. Douglas, firstly. The party has been talking about rebranding, reshaping, changing the entire vision of the party heading into the 2020 elections, or when elections are called. Do you think it's a fair assessment that's being bandied in the public that if you're rebranding and changing the entire scope of the party, that the leadership also should change? Secondly, to Dr. Drew, you've been very vocal in terms of your criticisms of the health sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. Can we see, if any, you engaging or putting ideas out there to assist in changing the entire landscape of the health sector in St. Kitts and Nevis? To Mr. Maynard, can you just give us an update in relation to how far the investigations into the fire at your constituency office has gone? And why is there a change now to anybody in the party to rebrand, refocus 2-3 years basically before elections are constitutionally due, basically?
I don't think that there is anything at all wrong with rebranding and having some changes in the leadership and not all changes in the leadership. The leadership of the party, apart from those who are elected at party conference annually, must also involve the leadership of the party at the various constituency levels. As we've just outlined, so far we have identified 4 constituencies where the leadership will change. 3 have already been somewhat announced at the lowest level of the party hierarchy and structure, and 1 more will be announced shortly. The leadership, apart from that, what we have done especially over the last nearly 2 years, 24 months, we have looked at a restructuring of the party at its leadership level as well. There is now what is called a political leadership arm, and there is also an administrative leadership arm. That is a fundamental change as part of the rebranding and thus the operationalization of decisions that are taken within the party structure and implemented into not only the party branch structure, but in the country generally. Therefore, I am not one of those who believe at all that in restructuring or rebranding the party, that the entire leadership has to be removed. In fact, if you can show me any organization that is worth its salt where that has been done, then I may consider myself wrong in this particular matter.
With respect to the healthcare sector, I think that my last, at the forum that took place at the old girls' school, I mentioned 1 or 2 new things that we will see. Let me point out, in general terms, what we will see with respect to the healthcare sector under St. Kitts-Nevis Labor Administration. 1, we understand that the human resource is the most fundamental and important aspect of the healthcare sector. The nurses, the auxiliary workers, the doctors, all those who work in health would be treated with respect. They will be treated as a worker who is valued. That is the first thing. And I think in doing that, morale would improve significantly. Secondly, there will be no MRI machine in St. Kitts that is shared between primates, or what we call monkeys, and human beings. That will be totally eliminated. 3, no single family in St. Kitts will use our healthcare system as a profit organization. And most importantly, healthcare delivery to those who access our institutions of health would be of good and stable quality. And I want the population to understand that those are the things we are working on. And let me also mention that we will rebrand, we will reformat, we will significantly improve our primary healthcare system, which would be the backbone of the new healthcare sector under the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party administration. I think the population and those who access healthcare will be proud of that general outline.
I ask the Honorable Congressman to answer
Right.
question with respect to the constituency office.
Yes, as you are aware, there was a fire just about 2 months ago where the office was severely damaged in the hall area. From the fire department, their report suggests, and I'll just read a section of it in their conclusion, investigations are ongoing. However, this fire, like many other fires with similar pattern, showed the same signs of that of an electrical nature. And so the fire department at this point believes that the fire was of an electrical nature. With respect to the renovation of the property, we have had discussions, or proposal rather, from the insurance company. There were some changes that needed to be done. I believe that those changes are now complete, and we are just waiting on the final go-ahead from the insurance company to continue or to start with the renovation process. I know the constituents in my area are anxious to get back full utilization of the office. We continue to use it in the administrative part. We had our meetings there last night, but to accommodate large gatherings in the hall, that is not possible at this moment. I also wanted to just quickly address the issue of the leadership, and I would urge the media and the Federation not to be caught up in the distraction tactics that the government side is using. The call for leadership change in the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party is coming from outside of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. They, sorry?
There's a call?
They are saying that there is something wrong with the leadership. Now, my question to the government side and those who oppose us, if you are resolute in your belief that there is something wrong with the leadership of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, and you are our competitors, why would you want to change something that is not working, when you would be in a better position to win if you claim that the leadership on the Labour Party side is somehow flawed? My summation is that the government continues to be scared of the experience and the tactical prowess of the leadership in the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. And they have embarked upon a process to try and discredit that, because they realize that it will be a mountain of a challenge when the next elections are called. And so I urge the public and the media not to get distracted by this effort to discredit the leadership. Our party is completely and truly democratic, and whenever the time comes that the party feels that it ought to go somewhere else, they alone will decide that, not anyone else who, our competitors, will be able to tell us when we must or who we must change in the leadership structure of our party.
And we have Mr. Batt.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My question is to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Denzil Douglas. First of all, could you expand on your statement where you said that in 2018 it is the year for change and that the actions of the Labour Party are going to be decisive? What do you mean by that? What does that involve? What does that entail? Secondly, you said also that the abuse of the parliamentary privilege by, I guess you're speaking about the Speaker and other members of Parliament on the government side, that also must stop. How do you intend to get that done? And also, you've indicated that, well, let me back up. In Parliament in the last session, there was the indication from the Attorney General that the case of your diplomatic passport and your supposed allegiance to the government of Dominica is being taken to court. How do you respond to that? What are your comments in terms of that? I'll leave my questions there for now.
The leader of the opposition Labour Party. How many passports do you have, or do you hold for a country? Do you hold 2 passports, or do you hold just 1 passport? Do you hold a passport for Dominica, and do you hold a passport for St. Kitts and Nevis? That's my first question. My second question is to Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew, I would like to know, what type of democracy are you believing? Are you a socialist? Or are you a democratic person that believes in pure democracy? That's my second question. And my third question is to Honorable Maynard. Honorable Maynard, many of the people in your constituency are saying that you don't have much conversation with the people in the constituency. You shy them off. You don't approach them in a friendly way and a comfortable way that you can have conversations with them. Those are my questions, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Val. I think we now have the response from the starting first with the common leader.
Right. We say that this year is going to be a year of change and action. Change in the sense that the Labour Party's image, firstly, will be different. I mentioned before that you will begin to see the obvious changes in the leadership, especially at the candidate level, very shortly when they are publicly showcased. It is action because we are obviously just about 2 years out from the next election. And so the party begins all of its preparations for the upcoming elections, whenever those elections are called. One of the areas of decisive changes will be how we tolerate abuse on the part of the Speaker in the Parliament, which you yourself mentioned. We, of course, will use all of the measures that are open to us. We have engaged the Speaker in the past. The Speaker, in his conceit and maybe lack of proper information, he has said to us very, very clearly that every decision that he has taken is right. So there's no need for him to review any of the decisions that he has taken. Well, we have a different view. And we believe that in a parliamentary democracy where you have in the House representatives of the people, nobody is supposed to be allowed to stifle the will of the people through preventing their representatives from speaking on their behalf on critical matters that are engaged in their governance. And so we will do all that we can to ensure that the way that the Speaker allows himself to be used as a puppet by the Prime Minister, that comes to an end. We will use every single means at our disposal. And when I say every, I mean every. So that the people's voices in the Parliament of our country will be heard. Right, and so I think I've answered the parliamentary abuse part that you raised. The question with regard to the case that has been brought by the Attorney General, it's really amazing that the Attorney General can find time to go on what appears to be a political witch hunting, but he doesn't have time, it would appear, to ensure that the justice system works to bring justice to so many people who have become victims of crime here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So many unsolved murders, so many unsolved criminal activities, charges of sexual abuse of our women right in his chambers. But he finds time, it would appear, to go after some kind of witch hunting for Dr. Douglas in order to distract the attention of the public from the real political issues of the day, which impact upon how people are living and how their living standards have seriously deteriorated for the last 3 years under the Harris regime. I want to make it absolutely clear that the matter, as you mentioned, the court matter pertaining to the diplomatic passport, it's a matter that is unfortunately in court. What can I say? What can I say? I think my lawyer was on the radio earlier, this week it was? Or last week, trying to deal with this matter. I don't have anything else to say except to emphasize that Harris has become so embarrassed over the fact that he refused to issue a diplomatic passport to the former Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis in my person, that my colleagues, 3 of them, came forward and offered to give me diplomatic privileges through a passport. Three. And it would appear as if Dr. Harris had been so hurt by the attack that was launched on him when he undermined the Dominica Citizenship by Investment Program and the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Program by launching this hurricane fund that started the race of our program and the program in the Caribbean to the bottom. He has been so embarrassed over the whole incident that he is trying to hang on to some kind of evading tactics by taking a matter like this to court. Absolute nonsense. Because my understanding is that once there is the issuance of a diplomatic passport, there is no need for any allegiance to be given to any country. It is bogus and fake that they are claiming that I have a second citizenship. They know I do not have a second citizenship. It is wasting people's time. It is wasting taxpayers' money. And it is trying to take up our time, as has been taken up over the last 5 minutes trying to respond to it. So I shall leave it. The number of passports I have, that's my business. What else can I say?
So you're not going to say if you have one or two?
The number I have is my business.
I think we'll now ask Dr. Drew. We'll now ask Dr. Drew to respond to the question.
I want to thank the press for that question. Let me say, I think that in my opening statement, I said clearly that I'm part of an organization that brought democracy to St. Kitts-Nevis. I am very proud of that record and that tradition. That is one of the foundational principles on which I stand. Remember that the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party who gave poor black people the right to vote in this country. And through the power of the vote, we see that we were able to transform the lives of the former ex-slaves. That is fundamental and powerful for me. And so democracy is ingrained in my DNA. And that is why I'm part of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. Let me add that if you look at, for example, the PAM party, which is a weak party, it is very weak because it has no foundation on which it stands. It comes out of a tradition that wanted to keep black people, poor people down in this country. It was anti-democratic that decided that people who should vote are people who had a certain level of education, had a financial standing in society, are based on their economic stance. The St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party stands on democracy and says that as long as you're a human being in this country and you're over 18 years of age and your mind is in the right place, you have the opportunity to vote. I support that 100%.
The question with respect to the constituents in the constituency, I don't know if that was a test question, because in my experience in 3 years in my constituency, no one has ever accused me of that. In fact, the people of the constituency would be shocked, as many of them have already messaged me to say, what is he speaking about? But it deserves an answer nonetheless, to inform you that in my constituency, I have been one of the more accessible representatives. I made a conscious decision, for instance, to keep my office open since the last general election, save for and except when the fire occurred, where we can't have it open because of the situation. Also, one of the reasons why we had such a resounding victory in constituency number 3 was my ability to reach across all party lines. PAM, Labour, PLP. As I continue to walk through the constituency yesterday, on the weekend, I have never had that question put to me like that. In fact, people know that I'm extremely accessible. Even those who don't support me always feel encouraged that they can have a conversation with me. And so I would think that that was really a test question. Even from my days as a Calypsonian, no one would ever accuse me of not being someone who is going to shy away. It is my nature to engage. And I see you're not engaging me now as I speak to you. I don't know why you're afraid to look at me, and I'm looking at you. Right. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Afterwards, I'll show you. This is not a game, sir.
If I may say, with respect, if it is one thing about the Honorable Congress Maynard, he is very accessible. And I am sure that with a reporter asking a question of this kind, what it says to Congress as a politician, continue to try even harder. That's what you have to do. Try even harder. Because there will be the one or twos who are plugged into Val.
Yes.
You know, so you have to try harder to reach them.
Yes. In fact, just as he's asking me to get the text messages, I will ask him for the names of those who told him that, so I can have a conversation with them.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll take 3 more questions. One from Labour spokesman, Win FM.
Welcome to numbers, and so of course naturally the issues that the party has with the electoral office is a serious one, and so I want to know if this matter is affecting the party's state of readiness and how much time do you expect spending on this matter, since this is a year of action.
Well, my question is kind of linked to hers. You spoke about the court. Well, Ashan Dixon from Kitts-Nevis. We spoke about court action. How soon are you planning to take such action?
Win FM.
LC Harry. My question is one question, A and B.
One.
The first part of the question is, Honorable Opposition Leader, you mentioned integrity in public life legislation that the Labour Party would have, passed. I want to know, do you think that that legislation should include disclosure of campaign finances, as well as the disclosure of citizenship or the ownership of passports for parliamentary representatives? Mr. Maynard, you spoke about the GDP declining from 7% to 1.9%. Earlier this month, I checked out Commonwealth scholarships and I realized that St. Kitts-Nevis is no longer on the list of countries to receive Commonwealth scholarships because those scholarships are for low to middle income countries. How do you account for that?
That's a different standard. Yeah.
No, one more question.
Andre Huey, sknewsline.com. To Dr. Douglas, you mentioned the allegations of sexual crimes in the office of the Attorney General's chambers. And of course, you can't provide grave details, but if you could give some indication as to what exactly these allegations are referring to specifically. And as a part 2, just as a follow-up to a question asked by my colleague earlier about the leadership change, we did...
The Honorable Marcella Liburd to answer the first question with respect to the electoral office.
The electoral office, it is troubling because, as you said, it's about lists, and lists are very important to elections, but we're not allowing that to hinder us from going forward. We intend to be more vigorous in terms of oversight. We have oversight of the office already. We intend to be more vigorous of that oversight process with respect to the electoral office itself. And we believe that we have very strong evidence of what is happening with respect to, or not happening as the case may be, with respect to these electoral matters. As the leader said, remember right after the elections, the office was closed for like 6 months or something like that. I mean, there were no lists, there were no, being publicized. People couldn't go into register because the office was not open. And up to now, as we speak, almost 3 years later, there's been no explanation to the public as to why the office was shut. We heard that they were carrying out some investigation in there in terms of the electoral office, and we're still waiting for the investigation. We said, well, are the results or whatever they were carrying out in terms of the results of this investigation into electoral office. But as we go along, for example, we have a registration officer in constituency number 1 who constantly takes to Facebook to say all sorts of negative things about the leader of the opposition and make all sorts of other negative comments about the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party. And he is the registration officer for polling division number 1. This is just totally unacceptable. I guess he has his politics like everybody else, but if you occupy a certain position, you should behave a certain way, which is the same thing I'm saying about the speaker. And so you can't have registration officers out there criticizing and saying all sorts of negative things about political parties. When this government changed, the first set of objections they had probably sometime last year, for example, the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party was not invited at all to these objections. We had to find out about them and impose ourselves on them to know exactly what is happening. So clearly, they have an agenda which they're carrying out. And I say the frequent breaches is this month, go on here. The lists are supposed to come out on the 15th of every month and on the last day of every month. On the 15th, you have the monthly list, and on the last day of the month, you have the monthly revised list for the month before. So for example, in January, the monthly list for December would come out on the 15th of January, and the monthly revised list for December would come out at the end of January. About the 23rd of January, that's this week or last week, is when the monthly list for December is being posted. And this happens frequently, that they're posted late, and in terms of the revised list, in many instances, not posted at all. And so you have all these anomalies that are happening, and then when you look, people's names just disappearing from the list. You don't know how the name came off the list. And then when you go, as I said to them, they're saying, oh, go and re-register, which is clearly part of the strategy of what is happening inside here. How soon we'll take court action? We hope very soon. I don't want to say, but we hope very soon. We would hope that probably within another month or so, that we would have some action in court based on all these atrocities and irregularities that are happening at the electoral office without any response coming from the supervisor of elections. And you must note also that probably for more than a year, the Electoral Commission never met. No meeting at all of the Electoral Commission. So there are all sorts of irregularities going on with respect to the electoral office, and so we have to make sure that we are on top of things.
I just wanted to distinguish between the two things that are at issue here. Yes. One, because of the leadership of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, during the time we were in government, we were elevated from a low-income or middle-income state to a high-income state. That is the amount we can produce and the amount that people can make for a living. So we were labeled as a high-income state. So for many assistance programs across the world, when you reach that status, a lot of the freebies, as we would call them, you're not going to get them. Scholarships, programs, funding for a number of things, you're not going to get them. That is completely different to the rate at which the economy grows. Now, you can have a high income per capita, for instance, high income per capita, but your GDP is in the negative because you're declining, you're going down, as you would say. So what I was saying is that when we left office, apart from being a high income state, our economy was growing by about 7%. So we were expanding on that. Since then, and regularly, I think the mark of a good economy is about 5% and more. So we were going at about 7% just about the time when we left office. In a short period of time, we believe because of the lack of vision of this particular government, with no initiative, no ingenuity, no real vision of how the country should go, in a short period of time, for no reason other than incompetence, we have seen that the economy has fallen to about 1.8, 1.9. Last year alone, the growth rate of the economy was revised by ECCB either 3 or 4 times at the end of every quarter. Downgraded, revised downward for every single quarter or 3 of the 4 quarters. That shows you that the expected amount of economic activity in the country was much less than they would have anticipated had the government had prudent policies to govern. So I hope I have established the difference. So yes, we could have a high growth rate of 10%, but we are low-income state. We're going to have benefits of scholarships and so on. But then you can have a negative GDP growth and be a high-income state and not get anything at all. So I urge you to do some follow-up so that you understand the difference.
Even though certain types of scholarships that we cannot access, scholarships which are specifically geared towards low-income and maybe middle-income countries, there must be some access to scholarships that we would have from the Commonwealth. But it would be a different type of scholarship, I'm sure. But
more competitive.
Right.
Countries will compete for the same scholarship instead of these scholarships coming specific to St. Kitts.
I know how scholarships work.
Right. So I think, in other words, I don't want us to think that we will not access any Commonwealth scholarship at all, because I don't think that is so at all. It's just the type. You mentioned the fact that you would hope to see integrity in public life include 2 things.
I'm asking if you think that it should include those 2 things.
Well, yes, I'll answer. I am saying that the integrity in public life legislation did not include those 2 things. And there are specific reasons why it would not have included them. Because the matter to do with having a number of passports is really not a serious matter, in the sense that what is more serious is whether the candidate who is attempting to get into the parliament to represent people, whether he has dual citizenship or not.
I didn't say it's multiple citizenship or number of passports.
Right. So the integrity in public life will not include those, because they have separate legislation dealing with those matters. For example, right, I was just about to say that. For example, on the matter of who is qualified to enter our parliament as a representative, the Constitution makes it very clear that you cannot have an allegiance to a foreign power. I mean, that is the Constitution. What we had done, and I think people are confusing what we did a few years ago, by having enabling legislation, when we looked at the electoral law, what we did was having the person declare up front. In other words, the person should not go through an election process, wins, and then someone challenges him that, oh, you can't go to the parliament because you have dual citizenship. What we did with the enabling legislation a few years ago was to have that being declared up front. Declared up front. And, oh yes, a nomination, it had to be declared. And if that person, therefore, by that law, enabling legislation, which was lending support to the constitutional requirement, if that person then did have, he had to relinquish, because the law said, that is the Constitution, said that you could not enter the parliament if you have a dual citizenship, or if you have taken allegiance to another foreign power. The matter of electoral financing, that also is a separate total matter from integrity in public life. In fact, there are several institutions around the world, the Carter Center, for example, which is actively pursuing, and we've had examples in Jamaica and the Dominican Republic, where they have actively pursued legislation or created environments where the campaign financing is publicly declared. In Barbados, for example, the campaign financing is even contributed to each party by the taxpayer of the country, and where it is also it also speaks as to exactly what campaign funds should be used for in terms of paraphernalia, etc., etc., etc. So that is a totally different matter, and I don't think that we would want to crowd the integrity in public life with matters that are handled otherwise by way of legislation and other practices. The matter with regard to where a party might have failed, it changed its leadership in rebranding. And you mentioned St. Lucia. St. Lucia in particular, the leader stepped down, and I can tell you personally, because we spoke on the same night of the election, the leader almost lost his seat. Almost lost his seat. And he declared that he saw the defeat of the party and the fact that he almost lost his own seat as a personal loss. And so he said he could not lead his party. In our case, in our last election, the highest I ever had in an election was last election, 93%. So I don't think I am a Kenny Anthony at all, and therefore I don't see the need for that. Plus, I think you need to understand that the Labour Party is informing itself from scientific analyses. We've spent an enormous amount of time, energy, and money making sure that every step that we take, it is driven by research. We've done polling, and as I think someone said earlier today, the polls that we've done so far have shown that, that Douglas is way ahead of the existing Prime Minister or any other leader for that part in this country. That is why the focus is naturally on me. Right, and Kenny had lost elections twice. This is the first time that I've led a party into a loss in recent times after 20 years. So I think that, right. And I think that because of our approach to this matter, especially when the polls are saying clearly that the next election will be won by Labour, why change the leader? If the need had arisen from the scientific analysis, of course we would make those changes. But obviously that's not what the situation is at all. There was, someone asked about the sex scandal, etc. Yeah, right. This is a very serious matter. Very, very serious matter. In fact, if I were the Attorney General, I would have resigned. Because someone is basically, and I have, put the scandal directly into his chambers. And if up to today he has not yet called for an inquiry in his own chambers, then the country must be asking itself, well, why hasn't the Attorney General carried out an inquiry in his own chambers when the leader of the opposition in the Parliament made that statement? This is a very serious matter. When I made the charge? My brother, there are several persons who have come forward. And it's very, very unfortunate that our young women in this country would go to the office of a minister of government or the chambers, I should say, of the legal department of the Attorney General and come out charging that she has been sexually violated.
Are you saying the Attorney General is the one?
I'm the one speaking.
Can you just...
And this is what I'm saying, you know. I mean, I understand the consternation on your faces here this afternoon. I understand it, because that's the way I feel myself. And so one is wondering at this stage why nothing is coming forward from the Attorney General chambers, why nothing is coming forward from the police, the DPP, and why nothing is coming forward from the Prime Minister himself. You are investigative journalists here. How many of you have asked for an opportunity to speak to the Attorney General on this matter? When are we going to continue to ensure that people's basic rights, especially from the press, that they are being protected and preserved in a democracy like St. Kitts-Nevis? When is the press, the media, going to find its own feet and its tongue so that it can question matters of this kind? I would want to stop here.
Can I ask you a question, Mr.
Members of the press, the media, I've been told I should end the press conference here.
Yeah, I think we should give your...
But really,
winding up statement.
When an Attorney General is going to use taxpayers' money and consume the court's time and the chambers of which he is in charge time on a frivolous charge, when in fact there are women in our country who are crying out loud for help and nothing is happening, then one must ask, where are we going in this country? And that is why I believe that the time has come for the Labour Party to mobilize its efforts. It must mobilize its people around this country and ensure that we remove this government led by Timothy Harris, supported by the Attorney General, from office and return our country to a state of pride and dignity and growth and well-being for the people of St. Kitts-Nevis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. And this brings to the end the first press conference for 2018. We thank all listeners to KISS FM as well as Freedom FM. And we thank the representatives from the Labour spokesman, Win FM, Sugar City, Voice of the Caribbean, SKN Newsline, SKN Vibes, St. Kitts-Nevis Observer, and My View for coming this afternoon as we return you back to your respective radio stations.